Okay, so yeah, still long queue outside the door. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Toni Willberg. I work for Red Hat, based in Helsinki. So it was not so far away from me to come here. And nice to see so many people still alive after a couple of hours of the presentations. Now it's only me and my presentation between you and lunch, so let's see how it goes. Okay, so I guess everyone knows the company by name, Red Hat. Is there someone who has never heard of Red Hat before? Okay, that's good. Last time I was making a presentation in Helsinki a couple of weeks ago, and in one conference, and there was one guy in the audience who had never heard about Red Hat before. I guess he worked for Microsoft or something. Okay, so so those of you using Twitter, please feel free to tweet about how good the presentation was, right? And you can do it also after the presentation, not before. So let's see. So let's move forward. So the topic of the presentation for the next 40 minutes was how to build your own DevOps PaaS environment on top of OpenStack. And from my experience, when people are actually doing what it says, like build it yourself, it might look something like this, right? Who has seen a data center looking like this? Who has built it yourself? Yeah, the same guy. I also created a couple of data centers like this 15 years ago. I think they're still up and running, but for obvious reasons I don't work there anymore. Yeah, so building a cloud yourself is a quite challenging task. So let's do some more exercise with your hands. Who has heard of OpenStack before? There were a couple of hands who not. And those who have not heard of OpenStack have heard of Amazon before, right? Yeah, they sell books and no, the same. Okay, so Amazon, yeah, it's a bookstore, but what they do, they have a very huge cloud. So Amazon, Microsoft Azure, and Google are the biggest cloud providers in the world. And what happens when you don't want to use them? Right? Do you set up your own virtualization? VMware, anyone? KVM virtualization, Xen? And how then would you run the same stuff that you run in Amazon on your own VMware? You don't. You need something else. So for this reason, companies like Rackspace and a government agency called NASA, the North American Space Agency, started to create something called OpenStack. This happened several years ago. So they wanted to clone the functionality of Amazon, so they could have their own Amazon in their own data center. The reasons for that will come up later, but it's basically a fully open source kind of cloud operating system, but it's not an operating system, it's an infrastructure as a service. Lots of components that create something that you can use to create your own Amazon type of service. So it's designed for multiple different things, like unlimited scalability, basically, depending on how much money you have to put on your own data center, because you need to buy the hardware as well when you build OpenStack Cloud. Multi-tenancy, if you are a service provider, you want to provide virtualization or cloud services to other companies. So you need to have multiple tenants. Tenants means customers in this case. If you are an enterprise and you have your own OpenStack, the tenant could mean different product teams, for example. Openness. It's a platform for cloud applications, but this is the most important thing. In case you cannot read, I can spell it out. It's not a replacement for your traditional enterprise virtualization, be it then KVM or Hyper-V or VMware. OpenStack is not going to replace those. They are two completely different things for completely two different use cases. So some typical use cases that OpenStack can be used for. I mentioned the service offering already, or service provider offering. Internal clouds, you want to have your platform as a service running somewhere, basically your development tools. We get into that later. And large-scale web applications, Netflix, PayPal, Skype, these kind of companies. They want to create their own data centers, but still want to have the flexibility of creating cloud applications on top of that. So that is a couple of use cases. And a couple of more. So grid computing, big data analytics, these kind of things. M2M, who knows what it means? Machine to machine, yeah. What's the new term for this? There are basically two new hype terms. Yeah, Internet of Things or industrial internet. Lots of sensors, lots of data flowing somewhere, and you need to put that data somewhere. And what happens after? You need to process it. So big data analytics. You run Hadoop on top of that. So where do you run Hadoop? So you need a virtualization environment or cloud environment. So that is what OpenStack provides. NoSQL. Basically what, for example, my friend from SAP was talking about SAP HANA. That's running in a cloud environment. NFV, anyone? Anyone working in telco industry? Mobile operators, Ericsson, Alcatel-Lucent, Nokia. They are creating components for basically providing network connectivity, mobile phone connectivity, this kind of SMS, billing. All that stuff is traditionally being run in physical machines that cost a lot, and then there's a small piece of software that is very cheap. So the hardware was not manufactured by these companies that I mentioned. It was purchased from OEMs, hardware manufacturers. So telco providers or telco manufacturers basically want to get rid of the physical hardware and create just the software. And where do you run the software? On OpenStack. So NFV stands for Network Function Virtualization. It's basically virtualizing everything that you need to run a mobile operator or ISP, for example. And there's a huge potential here in NFV world. All the big manufacturers and network operators are moving to this kind of field to replace the traditional hardware. And one thing here is the workloads that you run currently in, for example, Amazon, when you need to move it to your private cloud. OpenStack is what provides you the functionality. So why someone would want to move it or not to put it to Amazon? Privacy, yeah, legislation. For example, the X-Road project, you cannot put that in Amazon in US, it has to stay in EU. Or, for example, Nortal, who's one of the sponsors, they won the deal with the Finnish tax authority to process all the tax transactions in Finland, for example. So they cannot put that in Amazon, it has to stay in somewhere in the European Union. And so on, and so on. So this is basically agile and flexible. Anyone heard of term DevOps before, right? So how many of you are the devs, the developers? And the rest, ops, managers? Good. So DevOps is OpenStack is the ops part. And then the developers part is what comes on top of that. It comes after a couple of slides. But before that, not all organizations are ready for public cloud. As we talked about the privacy, security, legislation, whatever. And one reason could be money. Amazon is very cheap to start with. But what happens when you hit the jackpot? Let's think about Rovio or Supercell in Finland. What happens when you get 1 billion customers in a week to a new game and you run it in Amazon? It was very cheap for 1 or 10,000 customers. I have one customer in Finland who says that okay, now they have this kind of like a high performance computing use case that they analyze some stuff happening in the nature and need to do calculations. They run it in Amazon. It was very cheap until they realized that it cost 30,000 euros per month. With that money you can create your own data center a couple of times per year. Okay, so moving forward, the developers of OpenStack itself. So who is developing OpenStack? There was a saying before that some time ago that who will be the Red Hat of OpenStack? Because Red Hat is basically its worst leading open source company, leading the Linux development with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So who is going to be the Red Hat of OpenStack? Any guesses? Red Hat. So we are the #1 OpenStack company in the world. These are the numbers from stackanalytics.com, who analyze the actual code commits, what are happening in the OpenStack upstream. And you see the top 5, basically this is a 6 months apart. Juno came out a couple of weeks ago, Icehouse came 6 months ago. So the top 5 is always the same. HP, Red Hat, almost head to head, depending a little bit who is doing some integration with new hardware and so on. HP came with their own Helion and so on, so they did a little bit push on the OpenStack one as well. And then there's a company called Innovance here. Anyone heard of Innovance before? Or Mirantis? Mirantis and Innovance are the world's largest OpenStack consulting companies who are actually deploying OpenStack to customers and customizing it. So we decided to acquire Innovance, and it's now part of Red Hat. So if you sum the numbers here, we are over HP again. So yeah, but this is not important. Every 6 months there's a new release. Every 6 months there are different amount of contributions and commits. The point is that, for example, these 3 companies are very famous in open source world. And they are also very famous now in OpenStack world. Okay, how do you get OpenStack? How do you consume it? How do you install it? OpenStack is governed by OpenStack Foundation. So Red Hat was one of the founding platinum members of the foundation. Same way as the Linux Foundation is setting the direction for the Linux development, OpenStack Foundation is voting and creating blueprints for where OpenStack is going. So Red Hat is one part of that, but we are not the dominating one. There is not one leader of the foundation. There is a voting process, and every one of you can also join the foundation and vote. But what the foundation is creating is source code. OpenStack Foundation is not releasing binaries. You cannot just download OpenStack from the OpenStack website and start using it. You need to have a distribution of OpenStack. There are basically 2 variants. The Red Hat version is called Red Hat Distribution for OpenStack, which is compatible with RHEL, CentOS, Fedora, Scientific Linux, Oracle Linux. But there are no certifications, there is no support. Same way here. If you compile the foundation version from the source code, there is no support, no certifications, and so on. So these are released at the same time, every 6 months. And parallel, there is, of course, in the Ubuntu Debian world, there is a version for OpenStack as well. They come out at the same time when the upstream come out. So those who are doing development in that world, they probably take that version instead, because RDO stands for, the R is like RPM distribution. So what happens if you would run this in production and then you find a bug? Who will fix the bug? You will fix the bug. Or no one will fix the bug. Your production will fail. There's a 0-day vulnerability found from Bash, for example. Everyone remembers the shell shock a couple of weeks or months ago. Everything was basically broken for 24 hours until we fixed the bug. And of course we push the fixes upstream. But how long it takes for people who have built their own OpenStack environment to patch it? It can take some time. So same way as we do in the Linux world, we have Fedora and CentOS for the hobbyists and people who want to learn and play around, and then Red Hat Enterprise Linux for the enterprise place where you need insurance, guarantee, someone to support you. Same thing happens in OpenStack. We have Red Hat Enterprise Linux OpenStack platform. This comes after 2 months of the upstream, because we need a little bit time to stabilize and fix the bugs that the bleeding edge code has. So this has all the Red Hat support, all the certifications, and all the thousands ISV applications that have been certified for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. There are also, you are able to run them on top of the Red Hat OpenStack version. And one thing here, when this and this comes out, how long it's valid basically. There are no bug fixes coming to the releases. The bug fixes go to the trunk code where all the development happens. But On the enterprise side, we provide support plus 1 year. This was initially. Nowadays it's 3 years, and we try to expand it further and further. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux is supported 13 years after the launch. We launched RHEL 7 in September, in August, I think, and that's supported for 13 years. For OpenStack, it's not possible yet because it's moving so quickly. So how does the OpenStack look like? These are the components. Have any one of you been playing with OpenStack from like installing it or? Okay, then it's good for you to learn, which you can do by going to the foundation website or looking at the Red Hat documentation. But a couple of things that you might want to learn from here. Dashboard is called Horizon. This is basically same as in VMware world you have your vCenter. Or if you use Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, it's a manager component. This is what the users and administrators use to see what's happening underneath. And then there are lots of components. And under the components is an operating system. In our case, it's Red Hat Enterprise Linux, of course. And after that is hardware. You cannot run cloud in the cloud. You need physical hardware, right? If your manager tells that, yeah, I want to get OpenStack, can you install it in Amazon? It's not a good idea. Yes? Yeah, VMware has nothing to do with this. So there's a compute node called Nova. This runs KVM hypervisor, which equals to ESX in VMware world. And this is the one who actually runs the virtual guests like Windows, Linux, Enterprise Linux, SUSE, whatever, Ubuntu. You can run them in there. So in this picture it basically should be in different places, like you have the UI, then you have the APIs, and then you have the compute nodes and the databases and authentication. So if you look at the real architecture, it looks a little bit different. So we've got like everyone has been playing with VMware, or you know how virtualization works. So you have images. In VMware it's a VMDK images, in KVM is a QCOW2 images, a little bit same thing. So that's the one that has the operating system that you are running in the virtual world. And basically it's a template or the actual system. Then there's object storage Swift. So that you can use for many things. For example, if your application needs to store images somewhere or files, pictures, you don't need to put them in a file system. You can put them as an object. Everything is an object, basically. This is an object, but digital objects maybe go to the OpenStack. Then you have block storage that provides the underlying block infrastructure, so where you can put your virtual machines. And after that is the storage layer and so on. And one important thing here is something called Keystone, is identity management. This is one big element when you do OpenStack or whatever cloud, or even Docker containers or whatever. You need to have identity management so you can manage your SSH keys and how you basically access the virtual machines, and how you where you can put them, and how you access the different components of OpenStack itself. So in OpenStack it's called Keystone. And there's something in the networking. Originally there was Nova networking in OpenStack. It was part of the actual hypervisor, but that was moved to a separate project now. It's called Neutron. That's handling the networking component. So basically how a guest can access internet, how a guest can access another guest. For example, you have web frontend and you have a database in your cloud, how they can talk to each other, and networking of this. So the networking is probably the biggest problem that you will ever see when you actually build or deploy your OpenStack. Especially when you go to the enterprise world or deploy OpenStack in a bank or government organization. They have lots of secure networks that need to be stretched from their existing data centers into the virtual machines inside OpenStack and so on. The idea is not to learn how to set up the OpenStack now and what are all the components. You need to have training for that. So learn online, go to training courses, try it yourself. But this is probably, at the end of the training, is this enough? When you want to do like platform as a service, software development, production, Any guesses? Yes or no? No, OpenStack is not enough. It's not a cloud. It's an infrastructure that you use as a building block for a cloud. So what else you need? There's a need for something called hybrid cloud. And what it is, I will explain soon. But we need to start from beginning. IT consumer. This means you, if you use Google Mail or if you use Dropbox or whatever, or it means your internal customer like software developer or project manager, or it can be your external customer as well. They want to use applications and services provided by you. And you here means that you are the IT department of the company. You have traditional applications in physical and virtual world. In traditional meaning means these are rack hardware and this is KVM or VMware or Hyper-V applications or virtual machines running. So what happens when the consumer finds out, Amazon, yeah, I want to use it. So what happens? Well, they go and use it with your company credit card and your IT department has no clue that this happens. There's a term for this, it's called shadow IT. It means that there's another company providing IT to your customers and you, the IT department, don't know about it. Any guesses what would be better alternative for having a shadow IT? Well, change your IT department so it can provide the services that the customers want. So you can be your own shadow IT. These are the services that the customers actually want. They want to have self-service, web interface. Click and get a virtual machine. Click and get a development environment. Click to get a database. How many of you work for an IT department now? No one? 3, 4? How long it takes when your customer, internal customer, tells you that I want to have a virtual machine with Linux, with MySQL database, PHP and Apache. And then when you deliver, is it 2 days or 2 weeks?
Maybe
1 day. You've been doing it for a long time, you know how to do it quickly. Let's take an example. Company called PayPal. Everyone knows them. They deploy new versions of their applications, I think 20 times per day to production. Multiply that by 1 day per virtual machine. You will need to have quite many guys creating the virtual machines for them. 20 times per day. Okay, how to connect these two worlds? You create basically private IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So this small component in your cloud is OpenStack. It's nothing more than a small piece of the play. Then there's the public IaaS. The customers still want to use the Amazon IaaS. They want to create virtual machines in Amazon. But they also want to do some software development in Amazon or Microsoft Azure, or for example we had presentation about the SAP cloud before. It could be there still. And you still need to maintain your physical and virtual machines. And you have your networking, your storage, your identity management. And what else you have? You have your physical machines running, for example, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And there's a Red Hat Satellite. This is a system automation tool for managing Red Hat Enterprise Linuxes. So expectations are quite high, and this is what you need to do when you actually build a cloud. Okay, let's say that you can manage this, you have VMware, and then you can create this OpenStack, and then you know there's Amazon and Google and whatever. So you need to have something that we call cloud management platform that manages hybrid cloud. The term hybrid cloud means that you have your in-house stuff and then something coming from somewhere else as a service. For example, you have VMware, you have Amazon, or you have VMware and OpenStack, and you have Google Cloud Platform and Azure. None of these products, Amazon does not give you connectivity to OpenStack. Or if you use Google, they don't give you connectivity to VMware. If you use VMware, they don't give you connectivity to Google Cloud or Rackspace or Amazon or Red Hat Virtualization. So you need something else in the middle. There are a couple of products in the market, and the Red Hat's vision of that is that we have a product called Red Hat Cloud Forms. This is a cloud orchestration product. It's not overlapping with your VMware, it's not overlapping with OpenStack, not overlapping with Amazon, Google, Microsoft. It's filling a void in the picture. And so what the actual problem then is? The problem is that you need to have ideally a single interface where you can take a virtual machine from your VMware and move that to OpenStack, or move single virtual machine or service from VMware to Amazon, or move them from Amazon to your own data center. These kind of things, and it should happen automatically. And when it's automatic, it's called cloud bursting. You know, I think 2 times a year Stockmann has Hullutpäivät also in Estonia. They have their own data center. And what happens when they launch the marketing campaign for Hullutpäivät? The data center is not enough. They need to do cloud bursting so they can expand the web interfaces and the store frontends to a public cloud, for example Amazon, for this 1 week, and then stop using it and then do the business as usual in their own whatever they run in the private enterprise. These kind of things are orchestrated by a cloud management platform. Okay? So this is the only marketing slide I managed to add in the presentation. So if you need to think about cloud orchestration, you think about cloud forms. Competitors are, for example, IBM Smart Cloud Orchestration and VMware vCAG, which is a product that does part of, or it's a product family that does part of the same as this one, but not everything. Okay, and then in the beginning you remember a slide where it said that not all applications can be put on OpenStack or something. So you still need to put something in your VMware or in Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization. These are competing products, by the way. So for example, you put your huge database or your ERP system or huge monolithic CRM system, email system, something, it can still run in VMware. And then on the other side you have the cloud, next generation workloads on the cloud. These are applications that need horizontal scalability. They are dynamic and they can be replaced on error. If something breaks here, you throw it away and deploy a new application. This is side you scale by adding memory and disk. This side you scale by adding more nodes and more instances in the cloud. Any questions about this difference? Sometimes I talk to customers that, okay, they're interested about OpenStack and tell me what OpenStack is and I want to deploy it now. And then I ask, what's the first use case you want to do? Well, we have this Oracle database we want to put in the cloud. No, you don't want to. You want to put it here or in the physical machine. Many people still, after years and years of preaching about cloud, they don't have a clue about cloud. So this also means that the applications you deploy in OpenStack or Amazon need to be different. The application cannot depend on underlying infrastructure. In this side, you have stuff like high availability, disaster recovery. You can do many stuff to make sure that the application stays up. In this side, the only thing you can guarantee that if the infrastructure fails, the application dies. The best thing you can do here in the SLA is tell that, okay, the maximum SLA you get is 80%, and the 20% has to be handled at the application level. In here, you can provide 99.9% availability for the workload. And that's actually depending on here. Here, you don't have HA. It doesn't exist in cloud. If you want to do an application that does scaling and has an SLA towards the end customer, you need to build the SLA within your application or within the service. It means that the application needs to be able to orchestrate the scaling of the application itself, and so on and so on. Okay, to summarize the pictures, what you could have if you wanted to really build your own cloud infrastructure. You have lots of components, lots of moving parts, and then you remember the picture in the beginning with a couple of components and do-it-yourself data centers. This could end up like that if you don't know what you are doing. So setting up an OpenStack is not a half-day exercise. It takes 5 minutes. But what you do with it, how you integrate it with everything else, that's project of months and years, depending on how you do it. In Finland, we have non-profit company called CSC. It's not the Scandinavian CSC, but there's a computer science center for the Educational Ministry of Finland, and they have been creating OpenStack environment by hand. They've been building now 3 years and it's almost ready. So that could happen when you do it yourself. There are alternatives. I'll talk about that also later. We covered IaaS, infrastructure as a service, right? What happens next when your developers want to do something? They want to have platform as a service. So it gives you a framework of developing something. Here you don't need to care about the networking and storage. Here you don't need to care about the operating system and libraries. And then here, this is like SaaS, software as a service in the end. So in the previous presentation, Cloud Foundry was mentioned. So there are 2 major platform as a service products in the world who are basically dominating. One of them is Cloud Foundry and the other one is OpenShift from Red Hat. And this basically is production ready. This has been existing for 2 or 3 years already. We have over 2 million applications running in the online version of OpenShift. But the idea is not that everyone goes to the online version. We would like you, in this context, you set up your own OpenShift enterprise version in your own data center and provide that to your developers in-house to create a application development framework. So it has all the possible libraries from Java world, from LAMP stacks, to relational databases, to NoSQL databases, and so on. And it's fully open source ecosystem. So we've got partners and customers actually participating in development of OpenShift itself. And the development tools here are, for example, JBoss Developer Studio, which is also called Eclipse, Jenkins, Maven, Git, so it's a version control system, teamwork tools, and so on inside. And what it actually looks like inside. So same thing as in OpenStack, there is a management console and then there are worker nodes, and these can run not only on OpenStack, you can run them in VMware, Hyper-V, even in Amazon. So you can create your PaaS regardless of what infrastructure you have underneath, or if you don't have at all, you can create it in public cloud, for example. And today we don't have time to do live demo, but you can do the demonstration yourself. You just go to openshift.com, sign up, it's completely free. You can use it, it's also completely free. This is basically what we use for demonstration purposes for customers who maybe are planning to create their own platform as a service environment in their own data centers. And yeah, also in the online version, if you would want to, if you are a small or medium business, you could use this as a production environment. It's okay for that. You can even buy more capacity with a credit card. Okay, so OpenShift.com to testing, and then OpenShift Enterprise to deploy on your own data center. And this is basically how we then combine these 3 different colors that I had in previous slides. So this is the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service includes JBoss middleware. Who knows about JBoss? Good? Everyone. So it's the third dominating like a middleware framework on top of with Oracle and IBM and then Red Hat JBoss. So that's the Java stuff. And then the developer tools on top of this. So when you create your own cloud, you need to have all these layers and also the management that we covered before. If you do it in-house, if you buy it as a service from somewhere, you probably are working somewhere here, maybe here, depending on if you buy a virtualization capacity, this one from somewhere, or if you buy the PaaS from somewhere like OpenShift Online, or you could even buy it from some Red Hat partners as a service. You don't need to always set it up yourself, because when you do it yourself, you've got this two options. Good, cheap, fast. Only two can be chosen. Yeah. As I mentioned, in Finland, CSC, they spent 3 years to build it. It's very good. It's maybe quite cheap because it's a government organization, it's free workforce. But it wasn't very fast, and so on. You can do it very fast and cheap, but probably it's not very good. And so on. So, this is just to brief to remind you how Red Hat works, regardless of the product. We do all the contributions in upstream projects. This is the open source community, like Linux, OpenStack, Apache, and so on. We put engineering workforce to work there. Red Hat has 7,500 people, and not all of that is salespeople. So we also have engineering, even in Finland. So then we create community projects like Fedora, ManageIQ, RDO, OpenShift Origin, Ceph, and Cluster. Who knows them? These are the storage, open source storage projects and products that are deployed most of the time when you deploy OpenStack. You don't use your Sun to provide storage to OpenStack. You do it software-defined storages. So we acquired a company called Inktank, who is the Ceph developer. We acquired a company called Cluster Inc., who is the cluster developer. And then we take these and stabilize them as stable products. Okay, yeah. In addition to the software development, we also have Red Hat Consulting. So this is for the enterprises who don't want to do it yourself. You can buy it from consulting from Red Hat or from Red Hat partners, for example, within Estonia or from Finland or wherever in the world. Training is also available and so on. But since we are running out of time, we might have time for some questions, like 1 minute. Yes? Yes. Yeah, Oracle also has OpenStack. It's called Red Hat OpenStack, branded as Oracle. Yes. True story. They are probably in the list somewhere. They are contributing the patch to change the logo. Same thing they do with CentOS. They take CentOS and create an Oracle Enterprise Linux. I hope no one from Oracle is here. They learned the truth. But I will be here a couple of hours. In the States, I'll have a ferry back to home at 4 o'clock. So please join me during the breaks. Have discussions. I can give you my contact information. Toni@redhat.com. Not so difficult. My work is to cover Finland and Baltics from pre-sales and architecture point of view. So I help you to help yourselves to make business for your end customers. Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone.